Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and today I will be doing another book recommendations video. So I had a lot of fun with my last recommendations video, which was Halloween themed, so I figured I'd do a Christmas themed one. So I took 8 Christmas carols and I matched them with 8 books, and I tried, for the most part, to pick at least half that I don't think I've talked about on this channel before, so we avoid being very repetitive. So let's just jump right on in. My first Christmas carol is Frosty the Snowman. And Frosty the Snowman, it's a childhood classic, right? We've all heard it a million times, so I wanted to pick a book that we've all heard of, but maybe haven't actually read yet, and is a childhood classic. And so for this, I had to go with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. This is actually my mom's copy of it from when she was little, and so it's very special to me. And I think we all know what this is about, so I don't need to explain it. Hopefully, if I did my job right, because I think we all know the Song of Frosty, so I'm hoping we all know the plot of this. Alright, next is one of my least favorite Christmas carols, which is Santa Baby, which is so, like, suggestive and just really weird. I remember being creeped out by it as a kid, and to an extent it still creeps me out today. But when I think of that song, I obviously think of like sexy, romantic, someone pining away for someone else. So what better than The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald? Am I right? Talk about someone pining away for someone else. Gatsby is Santa in this case. When I think of Gatsby, I think of someone sexy. I think of someone who tries to be romantic and thinks of themselves as romantic and obviously is pining away for someone. Just look at the green light. So I would absolutely recommend this. The first time I read it was my junior year of high school, and I really didn't like it all that much, but then I reread it a couple years ago and I absolutely loved it. So if you don't know what this is about a man named Jay Gatsby who has this ginormous house across the street from this lady, Daisy Buchanan. And Daisy Buchanan has a cousin named Nick Carraway, who is like one of the most famous unreliable narrators. And Nick lives next door to Gatsby, and he notices that there are all these big parties happening, and he decides to go to one at Gatsby's house. And he realizes that no one there actually knows who invited them. No one knows who Gatsby is. And Gatsby's kind of just like this name that people throw around, but they don't know who he actually is, how he actually came into all of this money. And so there's a lot of mystery surrounding that. And then there's also a romance, which I don't think is a spoiler, between Gatsby and Daisy. And it's a really good book. It's set in the Roaring 20s, and I recommend it. So the next song is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is all about an outcast who then ends up finding a group that they click with. Now, I do want to preface this by saying I know that Rudolph shouldn't have been an outcast in the first place, and he probably could do better and find a better group because those reindeer literally wanted nothing to do with him until he was useful to them. But in the grand scheme of things, we're just going with what I said at first. So a book with a person who feels very left out and ends up finding their group. I decided to pick Shatter Me by Tahada Mafi, and I read this, I think, in the spring, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know what took me so long to pick up the series, to be honest, because the original 3 books have been out for a very long time. But this is about a girl named Juliet who has these powers where people can't touch her, and her parents are kind of awful. Long story short, she's an outcast, and she ends up finding, people that she clicks with. And Tahada Mafi's writing is very fluffy. So it is kind of like a dystopian thing, but don't go into it expecting like a huge in-depth plot with a bunch of complex characters. It's really light and fluffy. And I personally enjoy it. I just know that style isn't for everyone. Kind of a heads up if you are interested in picking this up. So the next Christmas carol is Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. And in this song, there is the line, "Mistletoe hung where you can see, every couple tries to stop." And so I was thinking about books that have like multiple couples in them. And I obviously came up with Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. This is a pretty obvious like winter recommendation. but I honestly love this, and I'm not a huge fan of contemporaries, but I really enjoy this, and the fact that it's like festive just like kicks it up a whole other notch. So each of these authors wrote one kind of novella, I guess, inside of this book, and they all tie together in the end in terms of like where they're set, and you know, a character from this novella knows a character from a different novella, and it all takes place on Christmas Eve, I believe, and it's really cute. I really enjoyed it, and that is coming from someone who really does not read contemporary romance kind of stuff. So the next Christmas Carol is Jingle Bell Rock, which just suggests music to me, and an obvious choice for this one is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. And I listened to this book earlier this year, and I really, really recommend the audiobook because you get to hear the main character's raps, like rapped, obviously, so you don't have to like physically read them. It was so good. And the main character, Bree, is 16 years old, and her father passed away, and he was a famous hip-hop artist. And she is also interested in becoming a hip-hop artist, and so it's kind of her journey in doing that, but she has a lot of like setbacks and faces a lot of discrimination and has a lot of obstacles to overcome, and I absolutely loved it. The next Christmas Carol is Happy Christmas, War is Over, and this is one of my favorite Christmas carols. So obviously I was thinking about a book that takes place during the war, and one of the most memorable lines for me in that song is, "What have you done?" And so I was thinking about a character who maybe like really messed up. And for this, I'm going to go with Atonement by Ian McEwan. This is an adult fiction. This takes place in England during the Second World War, and it takes place kind of in 3 distinct parts, so it does shift in time. So it starts out with this 13-year-old girl named Bryony who misinterprets a hookup that she sees between her sister Cecilia and the housekeeper's son Robbie. And so she misinterprets this and tells a different story to their family. I believe he gets arrested. And time jumps, and we see where Cecilia's at, where Bryony's at, where Robbie's at. He is fighting in the war. And then it time jumps again. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you how it ends because that's spoilers, but I really, really enjoyed this book. I really loved all of the characters, and I love the way that it was told and the way that it was written. So if you're looking for a good kind of like historical time, I would recommend this one. The next song is Baby It's Cold Outside, and I didn't dig too deep with this song because I just wanted to be able to recommend a book that takes place like during the winter, because I love reading books like that in the winter, like books that are set where it's cold or something. So I decided to go with Winter's Bone by Daniel Woodrell because this book takes place in the winter and it is cold, and I felt cold while I was reading this. So it takes place in the Ozarks in Missouri, and it follows a 16-year-old girl named Ree, and she has a mentally ill mother and I think a 12-year-old brother, and then also a little sister. And she is in charge of hunting for food, cooking, housekeeping, everything. And her father was arrested a long time ago for manufacturing meth, but he is out on bail and no one has seen him in a long, long time. And so if her father doesn't appear for this court date, they're gonna lose their house, and already like her and her family basically have nothing. So he doesn't show up to his court date. So she decides to go out and look for him, figure out where he is, if he's alive or if he's dead, and she has to go and, you know, talk to the sheriff and go and talk to all these people who might know her dad from the past, which might not always be like the best people to talk to. So it ends up being this really good, gripping mystery of where her dad is, and it is very atmospheric and also very dark at times, so like be aware of that. It is like an adult book. So there are a lot of kind of dark themes and I believe triggers for abuse and sexual assault. But overall, it was such a good book, and I had it on my shelves for years, so I don't know why it took me so long to read it. I just read it this spring. So the last song is You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. And for this, I was just looking for a mean and dislikable main character, and I decided to go with the main character from Inside the O'Briens. So Inside the O'Briens is a book by Lisa Genova. So it follows the father of this family, and he is a police officer and like the main breadwinner for the family, but he is very much like you know, a middle-aged white man. All the stereotypical things you could think of that, you know, stereotypes he has, prejudices he has, things he discriminates against, people he discriminates against. He has all of those kinds of things. And so he's very unlikable and hard to relate to. But he ends up getting diagnosed with Huntington's disease. And Huntington's disease is a progressive brain disorder that causes uncontrolled movements, messes with your cognition, emotional problems, things like that. And it usually is diagnosed in like people around ages 30 and 40. I'm not going to get more into it because the psychology nerd in me just wants to talk about that forever. But he gets diagnosed with that, and his kind of whole mindset changes, right? And the dynamics he has with his kids and with his wife. And in the end, you end up sympathizing with him and understanding him more, and he's not as unlikable. So there kind of is that shift. But it's just really interesting and heartbreaking to read about someone like that who, you know, has never ever heard of that disease and whose whole life is changed because of it, because it is terminal. It's a great read. Wow, that kind of ended on a sad note. Sorry about that, but I hope you guys enjoyed these book recommendations. I had a lot of fun making this. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you next time.